Hey everybody, welcome to day 3 of the 5-day challenge to thrive through divorce. In our email this morning, I put out, saying how many smiles and laughs have been going on this week. And I, for one, never thought that I would associate divorce with fun and smiles and laughs. But it really is a testament to when you shift your mindset and start gathering these tools that we're bringing all week, then you do start smiling sooner and more often than you thought. So welcome to day 3 of this. I'm going to turn it over to my partner in crime and brilliantly resilient, Mary Fran Bontempo, to let us know who we have on tap for today.
We have such a wonderful guest and a great friend of ours today, Dr. Lise Deguire. So one of the most challenging aspects of divorce is the effect that it has on children. Dr. Lise Deguire is a resilience expert, having suffered severe childhood trauma and gone through divorce herself with her children. She is a clinical psychologist in private practice, has appeared on NPR, NBC, ABC, Fox, Sirius XM, and numerous podcasts. Dr. Deguire is the award-winning author of her memoir, Flashback Girl, Lessons on Resilience from a Burn Survivor. Lise, we are so delighted to have you. You bring so much every time that we talk to you. And when we were getting ready to do this, I knew you had experienced your own divorce journey, and you're brilliant. You've shared so much with us, and Kristen and I wanted to bring you in to talk about this aspect of raising children well, I guess, and healthily, if that's the way to put it, through divorce and beyond. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And having been through a divorce myself and having been raised in a divorced family, I have a lot of thoughts and hopefully wisdom to share. And, it's a tough thing to raise children in a divorce, but it totally can be done. And I think it can be done much better than we often fear.
Yeah, agreed. And I will say I'm still kind of in the thick of, I guess I keep saying the beginning of it, but it's been 4 years, 4 and almost 5, and I still feel like so much of it is fresh. And I'm wondering sometimes if that's because my kids in the beginning were at a completely different stage. I mean, they were, 12, 14, 15 in approaching middle school and just getting into high school. And now it's totally different with, senior in college, and it's just the stages are different. So I guess maybe that's why I feel like I'm doing this all over again. It's a whole new stage.
Yeah. And I really relate to what you're saying, Kristen. My children were 3 and 1 when their father and I split up. So they were really little. And at every age of development, we revisited the divorce, because at every developmental age, they came to understand different things or had different questions or different concerns. And so you don't just like talk to them about it once or deal with it with them once. You deal with it with them again and again and again as they get older and have more understanding in different questions. And so, it draws on different parts of us too at every age. It's complicated.
So does that, I can just, I can just feel people who are going through this at the beginning going, oh my God, like I have to do this for the whole rest of my life with my kids. So how do you get your mind set to that without freaking out, first of all? And as you go through these stages, keep them healthy conversations.
Okay, so the first thing, if I can just do a little preamble here. There's something I would really like to share with you and whoever is listening now that is something that helped me a great deal when I was going through a divorce with my daughter's father. And this is that there's a longitudinal study done by this woman, Mavis Hetherington, and she's been studying divorced families for like decades. And she did a long-term longitudinal study where she followed families that were divorcing, families that were not divorcing. So there was a control group, and she followed them for many years. Now, unlike most divorce studies where they only study the family for like a year, and the first year from a divorce is the hardest time.
Yeah.
Okay, not 15 years after, the first year, that's the hardest time. And then also a lot of divorce studies didn't have a control group. So any problem that a child had, it would be like, well, that's because they're from a divorced family. So what Mavis Hetherington found is that children from divorced family had a 20% likelihood of increased problems compared to 10% of the severe problems that children from normal families had. So it was an increase, but it was only an increase of 10%.
Interesting.
So that's not nearly
That's reassuring, I would imagine, to people who, as you said, when kids come from divorced families and there's an issue, everybody goes to that. Oh, it's that. I mean, clearly I'm an example with my son's addiction. We're not divorced. I mean, that had nothing to do with anything. So I think that can probably be very reassuring to people that of course there are going to be challenges, but it's not like your kids are doomed.
Exactly. I mean, a 10% increase in problems, I don't want to minimize that. That's not good, but it's not like a 60% increase in problems, right? Okay. And then the other thing that this study found was that there were a number of factors that seemed to account for kids who had problems. I'm not gonna be able to remember all of them. There's 7 of them. I'll probably get 5. So the kids who had increased problems came from parents that were like engaged in ongoing conflict that the kids were drawn into. Kids who, when their parents divorced, one of the parents, like, I don't know, moved to England and they hardly ever saw him again. So sort of like loss of a parent, right?
Right.
Kids who were thrust into poverty. Kids who had to move a lot. Boys had a harder time than girls. And it was better to have children be younger as opposed to older.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, and kids whose parents kind of stopped functioning well. Who stopped kind of being in the parental role. So yeah. I might have gotten all 7 of them, I'm not sure. But anyway, there were like a number of things that you could totally, I guess you can't control the sex of your kids, but there were a lot of things there that you really could control. And so that helped me feel like, well, I just have to be as stable as I can be, as functional as I can be, keep my kids out of this stuff, and be strong for them, and they will be all right. And you know what? They are.
Yeah. I appreciate every single one of those things, and I want people to really take them in. Do we still say rewind at this age? Whatever. Rewind it and listen to them again, because like you said, Lise, there are a lot of those items that you can control, and this is coming from someone who there was off the rails involved with the co-parent. I mean, there was some really big, so I know a lot of people are going through some big stuff that think, well, in a normal thing, sure, all those work. My kids and I all bounced back by focusing on what you just said, Lise. What can I do to keep myself as healthy as possible, as engaged, and keep them as healthy as possible, and gave them the tools so the 4 of us stay healthy, while off the rails, did his thing and then started to come back and get his mind back. And we did survive and still thrive. It just is a little bit more tools that you have to use. But it's my point is it's possible.
Right. Yes.
So what that brings a question to my mind, Kristen, and your situation is probably very similar to a lot of people. So what do you do if you have one parent who wants to keep the kids out of it, but you have another parent who doesn't? Like, how do you talk your kids through that? Like if one parent is hostile, for example, or just doing whatever they can do to make this, it's her fault or his fault or whatever. And how do you help the kids get through that without bashing the other parent? Because I can't imagine that's healthy either.
Yeah. So, and that unfortunately is not as uncommon a situation as we would like to think that it is. And I think a lot of people have it written into their divorce agreement that people are not going to knock the other parent, and still sometimes people do, and that happens a lot. So what I always say and do is I advise people not to engage on it, and just be like, let's just say for brevity's sake that it's the father doing that. say to the kids, well, I don't really want to get into that with you. Your father loves you very much. I love you very much. That's what's important. And just not get drawn into the mud as best you can, and to actually support the relationship with the father. And then people will say, like, but what the kids will believe him. And what I find out, I mean, I'm going to say 99 times out of 100, and I haven't found that one time yet, sooner or later, the kids figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
They always do. And if you've gotten into the mud too, they're going to see that in you. And if you're the one who's like protecting them and saying, you know what, you don't need to worry about this. Mommy's job, not your problem. I'm here for you. Let's talk about something. Kids realize over time that you're the one who protected them. They always figure it out.
Agreed. That's the experience I've had, and my kids are a little bit older. I will also add this. I have not been perfect in this. Shocking that I have not been perfect. And I'll catch myself ranting, and then I'll say I apologize when it happens. And that has gone further than almost anything else with my kids, because I guess it's like they know I'm human. There are times when it's like 50 million things are coming down and I'm like, I just can't do it anymore. But then I apologize for the rant, and then we move on. And I allow them the space to do it too. So, because here's the other piece of that, the other side of that coin, when they are upset and ranting, sometimes I have to unpack it like, okay, is this because there's really a problem there, or are you just being maybe a little bit spoiled here and you're having a bad day, and then I have to, through nice smile, gritted teeth, say, well, there's your dad, let's be kind. But it goes a long way to do that.
Yeah. There's two things that little pieces of wisdom that somebody told me that I'll share with you, because I think both of them are incredibly helpful. One is that your child is made up of half of you and half of their dad. And so when you're insulting their dad, you're insulting part of them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So be very careful, because even if they're mad at dad, it still hurts. It hurts in their core. Like, that's a part of me. That's my family. So I think that that's a really good piece of advice. And the other piece of wisdom that somebody told me once that I just find incredibly helpful, I can't tell you how many clients I've said this to, is you have to love your children more than you hate your ex-spouse.
That's a great statement.
And I don't mean to imply that we all hate our ex-spouses. It doesn't have to be that way. And I hope it isn't,
Mm-hmm.
But when you do, even if it's just that moment now and then, like, loving your kids is a whole lot more important than that negativity. It just is. And they will feel it. Don't think they don't know. They know.
I think you could even substitute the word in there for people that aren't having a big contentious issue with their ex-spouse. You can substitute the word divorce and journey in there, because there are times when we've come a long way with our relationship issues, but there's just things with divorce that stink. And when if you insert that in, if you love your kids more than you hate divorce or hate the situation, boy, is that a nice little game changer mind flip to say, where am I supposed to focus now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that one.
So here's the question. Since you're not obviously bringing the kids into the muck of it and the bad things, but when and how do you initiate conversations about this with them, or do you let them come to you? Because I imagine, as with every person, every kid, being different, some kids are going to be more reticent about it. Some kids are going to want to ask questions. Where do you land with that? Like, how much do you force them to talk? How do you initiate those conversations?
And when you say talk, do you mean like the initial conversation about divorce, or
I guess maybe I'm thinking more on the check-in kind of thing, like, how are you guys doing, like that sort of a thing. I mean, clearly the initial conversation is the one that everybody has to have. But beyond that, you don't always have to talk about it. How do you know when to talk about it? How do you know how to talk about it to your kids? And do you go to them and just check in and say, how are you guys doing with all of this? Do you let them come to you? I mean, I imagine it's a bit of a balancing.
Sure. And, I think also kids are different, right? Some kids are much more open than others. I had two daughters and they're both pretty verbal. So it was never hard for me to connect with my daughters in that way. I think, again, some kids are more closed off. I don't think it ever hurts to ask the child, how are you doing? How was your time with dad? Did you have a good time? I hope you did. I don't think it hurts to bring it up and ask. I don't think you want to force a child to talk. One of the things I did a lot with my kids when they were little, and that I always advise people with younger children, is to get some good books about divorce that you can read together. We had a book in our house, two of them, Dinosaurs Divorce, and It's Not Your Fault, Coco Bear. And, I swear I could recite these books, because we would read them and then we'd talk, and I could put them down and be like, oh, did you ever feel like Coco Bear? And, that kind of thing. And that would open up conversations too.
I like that, because you know what? Sometimes people think, oh, would a book really help? I've watched my kids, when they find out that someone else, either in their friend group or that we know that's their age, is going through divorce also. It's this, I don't know what it's called, and you probably know, at least what the professional term is for, but when they can relate that somebody else is in their shoes, it's a huge game changer for them. Even if they don't know them that well. And I mean, in my own experience, when I met people going through, especially in this community, the resilient community, people have gone through stuff. And when you find out that someone else has gone through some stuff, that's how Mary Fran and I came to become really good friends and business partners, because we just both have been through some big stuff. So when I do see my daughter, and my daughter also, when she has friends that are going through this now, I'll say to her, be the person that you wish that you had by your side in your friends group when this happened. Because what is it with all the shame and embarrassment around divorce? I don't get it.
I mean, there's historical things on that, right? Divorce wasn't even an option for centuries. And on the other hand, we also didn't expect marriages to provide us with anywhere near what we expect marriages to provide us with then. Used to be marriage was basically a property decision, right? You married, you got your wife, you got her plot of land, you made children, that was about it. Nobody expected to actually be happy with this person, or be soulmates, or think they were even attractive, maybe, right? And now we have so many more expectations of our marriage. So of course we're then more inclined to be like, oh, this isn't what I need it to be. But there's religious stigma that is often on divorce, and I think anything that in our lives isn't going perfectly these days, people tend to want to hide and shield away because social media and all that. So it's hard for people to be publicly going through something that isn't great.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So I want to just hit on something that you were just talking about, because we were talking about how kids go through these different stages. And you talked about how the expectations of a marriage, is that a conversation that you have at some point with kids who are a product of divorce about what their expectations of a marriage and a mate and all of that kind of a thing should be? Because, we all want our kids to be happy. And if they came from a situation that there's contention and divorce is not happy, is that something that you talk to them about? Like what a marriage is supposed to be?
Sure. I mean, I think it's good for kids to know.
I mean, obviously not when they're 6, but I mean, as they get a little bit older and they're starting to see the world in terms of that pairing up of marriages and families and their futures and that kind of a thing. I obviously I'm not a product of divorce either, but I wonder if there's not some leftover anxiety as to how am I going to know if this is the right person? My parents didn't know, like that kind of thing. There has to be some of that that may surface too.
Yeah. And you are right. I think that a lot of children from divorce, as they grow older and start to look for partners, there can be more anxiety, like, sometimes this doesn't work really well. So yeah, I think, hopefully you're modeling for them as opposed to necessarily even having to have the conversation, but hopefully you're modeling for them either with people you're dating or with friends or with other family members what healthy relationships are, right? Which are mutually respectful and supportive and mutually committed and being there for people when they need you, and forgiveness and grace and all those things. So hopefully they're learning that also in how you treat them.
Mhm.
I think it's always, conversations are great and I'm sure you can talk about it, but I think the way that kids learn the most is by seeing it. And I don't think they have to see it with their parents. I think they just have to see it.
I think you're exactly right. I've done that, and I've actually had some stuff that's come up in conversation, being that my kids are older and in relationships, and then deciding whether to get out of relationships or stay in them. It's been very interesting, and actually one of the good parts of this divorce is having those conversations to say, well, yeah, I didn't have this in my marriage, and then kind of all unfolded from there. Or now in this relationship, yes, I do have this, and that's healthy. But like you're saying, everything, then they see and talk about everything that's healthy, they know, it's almost like, well, they have the example of what not to do. That's what I always say to them. You have an example of what not to do. So go with that when you're sure.
Yeah, that part, that's wrong. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. But it's been very to the point of, I was nervous in the beginning, like, oh gosh, they've seen this horrible thing unfold and then fall apart, and they're going to think that that's normal. And it's actually been the exact opposite. It's their beacon of, ooh, I don't want that to happen. And they've been more open about their relationships to say, how can I make sure that this doesn't unfold that way? That's been kind of cool.
But Kristen, I would say that yes, they saw something difficult unfold, but they also saw you handling it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they saw the rise after the broken. And they also saw that it was not pretty. I mean, like our social media is real smiley and all that, but they know that to get from broken to brilliant was quite a ride. And they were right there along with me for it, and learning all the stuff that I learned too, which has made them extraordinary humans now.
So I think, just in these last few minutes, it comes down to don't be terrified. Your children are not doomed.
Mm-hmm.
Have conversations with them. Don't bash the other parent, obviously. Show them that you are functioning as best as you can. Am I missing anything? And the last question I want to ask you is, when do you know if your kids need more help with this? And I'm talking about therapy.
Yeah, okay. So I want to answer that, and then I want to get back to one other thing you were just saying there, Mary Fran. So, I mean, it's obvious, it's normal for kids to have some sadness, some grief, and anxiety and anger, and all those feelings are normal, and you're having them, so why wouldn't your kids? So all that is normal. If it goes on for a while, if it's getting in the way of their being able to sleep and eat and go to school and have friends, if it's getting in the way of their development, or if it's seeming severe, then get help. There is no harm in getting help. By the way, that's a good life lesson for a kid to have too. Got a problem?
Mm-hmm.
Get somebody to help you. Like,
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's awesome. I've had a lot of help. It's been great. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. The other thing I want to say, Mary Fran, is that, and I know the three of us have talked about this before, but I think it's really worth saying again. Your kids don't need everybody in their life to function well in order to be okay.
Mm.
They need somebody to be functioning well and believe in them for them to be okay. And you can be that somebody. If your ex-partner isn't going to be that somebody, that's too bad, and I'm sorry for that. But your kids don't need two thriving parents in order to be okay. They do need one. So, you can be that.
Good
Well,
one.
on that note, I think, I mean, amazing, wonderful advice. Lise, please tell everybody where they can find you, because you have so much brilliance to share with all of us and our tribe, and we want them to be able to reach out to you.
Great. So thanks for asking. So there's two ways to find me. First of all, as an author and speaker, this is my book.
Mhm.
And it's
My
amazing.
my resilience journey is in Flashback Girl, and then my author website, and that's where I speak. You can hire me to speak. Is lisedeguire.com. LISEDEGUIRE.com. I'm also in private practice for people who might be local who are looking for a psychologist. My practice is in Pennington, New Jersey. I'm super busy, but you can try to find me there too if I can be of help.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lise. And thanks everybody for joining us for another day in our Thrive Through Divorce journey. Tomorrow we have a super fun episode about your look and how to get back, get yourself back, and have some really fun tips from our friend Fashion Genie. So thanks everybody for joining in. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.